So I believe we will start now. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ramadan Kareem to all of you, my guests, and also the viewers who are, viewing this seminar through YouTube stream. To start, my name is Faisal Al-Blushi. I'm a chairman for Omani Society for Education Technology. OSET, or the Omani Society for Education Technology, is a non-profit organization or an official government NGO in Oman. Our mission in the Omani Society is to enable education community in Oman to effectively implement and integrate technology in education. For more information on OSET and on also how to be a member of OSET, you could actually go to our website. I'll just share now the link to our website. So this is our website, www.omaniset.org. So you will have all information about the society and also how to join and become a member of the society. And one more thing also, I would also request all the viewers to subscribe to this channel. This is a new channel for the society. So please subscribe so that you will be notified for any future webinars or seminars or workshop through this channel. Due to COVID-19, many universities and colleges, or all universities and colleges, had to close. And while some of these universities and colleges are still struggling with bringing any alternatives for the traditional or for the the normal classroom teaching, other universities and colleges actually managed to shift to online learning very soon to make sure that the students are not affected negatively by this closure. And today we welcome Prof. Simon Jones, the Vice Chancellor of National University of Science and Technology in Oman, and also Dr. Susami Chako, also from National University, to speak about the National University's experience with the online learning, or to be more specific, the emergency plan or the emergency online learning transformation plan. So I would like to welcome both Prof. Simon and Dr. Sami, and I will just now hand the speaker to Dr. Simon, please.
Thank you very much, Faisal, and thank you so much for inviting us along today to talk to the Omani Society for Educational Technology and also the wider community tuning in via YouTube. We're going to give this presentation jointly between myself, I'm the Vice Chancellor of the National University of Science and Technology, and my colleague, Dr. Susami Chako, who undertook two quite detailed surveys and statistical analysis to get the data that we had, which tells us what really works and what doesn't work in online learning. And that's what this talk is about tonight. So first of all, I'm going to share my screen with you. You'll hear me talk first. Susama will come in later on, and then I'll come back. So let's hope very much this works. Okay. So good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As I've said, my name is Simon Jones. I'm the Vice Chancellor of the National University of Science and Technology. And my colleague, Dr. Susama Chako, will be co-presenting this with me today. And this is the point where I'm trying to move on to the next slide. Okay, so if we go back one, there we go. So, the National University of Science and Technology is Oman's largest private university. It has about approximately 4,000 students, perhaps a bit more. We had double-digit growth this year, and it's based on 5 sites across the Sultanate of Oman. 3 in the Muscat, or the Muscat region, and 2 near Sohar, close to the border with the United Arab Emirates. We're a university that focuses on just 3 main topics: medicine, engineering, and pharmacy. We run a 6-year MD program at our medical college in Soha and a 4-year Bachelor of Engineering program, ABET accredited, at our engineering college in Al Hail near the airport in Muscat. We also have a pharmacy program, which is on our Bosher campus, closer to the center of Muscat. And we have a foundation year. This is for those who are outside the Gulf. This is a standard procedure in this part of the world where students undertake a foundation year to help them make the transition from school to higher education, and that's based in our Al Hail campus. The university itself was formed in September 2018, but it was formed from the merger of 3 existing colleges with long roots in Oman, dating back in the case of the engineering college to 1994. So what's the background? We were a university that did relatively little online learning. There was 1 week per semester in our engineering baccalaureate programs where students learned online. And certainly with our master's students, I may have forgot to mention that we have about 200 master's students as well, make use of online material. But fundamentally, the National University was a university that did traditional face-to-face teaching. And indeed, given the nature of medicine and engineering and pharmacy, there's a significant hands-on in every sense of the word element to our education. COVID-19 came along, which required us to move to online learning over the 15th of March 2020. And this created, I think the technical term is emergency response teaching. This created a requirement for us to move to entirely online lectures if our students were to continue having the learning experience. And we pride ourselves on the quality of our education, so it was important to us that we had, whether we taught our students well. The legacy issues of merging 3 colleges meant that we had a wide range of learning management systems in place. And given the fact that we had to produce the material right here, right now, the approach inevitably was to allow faculty to use whatever platform they most felt comfortable with. What we wanted to know was how well we were doing. And to that extent, we surveyed, in quite a detailed survey, the student body twice to see how we were doing at the start and whether we'd made any improvements. Dr. Suzama will talk a little bit about the survey. So over to you, Dr. Suzama.
Next slide.
Okay.
Next slide.
So yes, phase 1?
Yeah. Yes. Next slide. Yeah. Thank you, Professor. Rabdan Karim to all of you. So as Professor mentioned, we wanted to find out how the students were accepting that the new way of learning, and which is different from the conventional way. So what we want, the launch of the survey was done just after 3 weeks of operation. So that will just to show us what is the start, how the start was, and how the students are responding. Whether the methodology was to prepare a questionnaire, get it validated by the deans of the different colleges, and then launch the survey in the Survey Monkey, then give 2 days for responding. And then immediately we had all the responses collected and we analyzed the results. Similarly, just to find out, so what is in the phase, which was called the phase 1, and in the phase 1, how it was. Then we analyzed that responses and showed that what actions are to be taken to improve the teaching learning process. So also we wanted to see how the students have accepted and also satisfied with regard to this new way of learning teaching process. So next slide we can.
Okay, right.
So this was the first interim survey that the one interim conclusions were made. So many had the problem of not having proper internet connection in their houses. but almost everybody had. So we can see from the graph that almost everybody had the internet connection, and also the cost was also a problem. But still, the students, when they got interested into the online learning, they started upgrading their internet data, and and thus we got a better response in the phase 2, that is after 5 weeks.
Okay, let me come in here, please, Susanna, if I may. So one of the important questions we asked our students is, do you have internet connectivity where you're staying? And these results are a little bit surprising to us, because 19% of our students claimed they didn't have internet connectivity. Now, of course, it may simply be it's best to claim you don't have something rather than have something from a student's viewpoint. But we were surprised at this because 95% of the population of Oman have internet access. And that source is Ooredoo, one of the two major telcos in the company. And by internet access, we mean 4G or better. But according to our students, about nearly 1 in 5 of them were unable to access it. And we were a little bit puzzled as to why this happened. It wasn't an issue with cost, because fairly rapidly into the COVID crisis and the move to online teaching, both of the major telcos said that data access to any .edu.om, any university in Oman, did not count against individuals' data allowances. So it wasn't like they were running out of credit for this. And this was perhaps one of the first important discoveries we made. We had assumed that Oman had wide internet access. Indeed, according to many studies, it has the best 4G coverage in the GCC countries. But clearly, a significant proportion of our students were not without internet access. And so that moved us into a situation where we had to take the material that was being produced, put it on USB keys, and in order to maintain safe distancing, we made those keys available at the security offices at the entrance to each and every one of our 5 sites. So even if a country has significant coverage and significant data access, we found that a noticeable proportion of our students did not have internet access. The next slide here goes into that in a little bit more detail. And that was about the internet connectivity speed. And what you have on the x-axis here, from left to right, is the student's opinion of the speed of the internet connectivity. So this clearly was to do with people who had internet connectivity. And each one of those elements has 2 histograms. Phase 1, that was the survey we did approximately 2 weeks into our online teaching. And phase 2, which was the survey we took approximately 4 to 5 weeks after the start. So there's 2 to 3 weeks difference between the 2 phases. You could see at the start there were some real issues. Some 54%, I've got that figure by adding the phase 1 bars for slow and very slow, 54% of our students found the internet too slow. Again, we found this unusual because there are several independent studies that say that Oman has the fastest data network in the GCC countries. Indeed, the average download speed of a 4G network in Oman is 24.8 megabits per second. So 50% of people are getting even more than that. Even our most intensive data, which was an online video webinar, that can easily be done with a 2 megabit per second stream. So there shouldn't, in theory, have been any issues with using the network. But clearly, at the start, the majority of our students found the speed of the internet inadequate. If you look at phase 2, which was the second of the studies, that's the lighter of the bars, the ones to the right, you can see that things got better. It reduced to 32%, but even 1 in 3 students is still having difficulty with internet connectivity. And this was another one of the assumptions that I think this data challenged with us. We assumed that with 95% coverage and an average download speed of 24 megabits per second, there would not be difficulties in connecting students to the internet and supporting relatively high bandwidth communication. Clearly, there is evidence against that. It got better as students learned how to use the systems better, as they worked out where there was a strong signal and so on. But it's still clearly an issue for a number of our students, a significant proportion, in fact. Here's the next graph, which is where we asked our students what device they were using to access material. Now, students, of course, can use more than one device, which is why the sum of these bars is bigger than 100%. But at the start, the most common access to our learning material was via a mobile device. Even in phase 2, it went down a little bit, such that laptops became the modal value. But a good 2/3 of our students are accessing material via a mobile device. And that's interesting because our design methods and our learning management systems are created for large screen devices. We assume a typical screen is 15 inches, a PC screen. But the majority of our accesses, certainly at the start, were you getting a lot of material via a small 5-inch mobile screen. You saw laptops got used a little bit more as time went on. Maybe they were finding difficulty with the mobile version. And tablets really didn't change much at all. The difference between the two figures is within the range of error for the size of the sample. But again, we were surprised how much emphasis was made by our students on consuming content via a mobile device. So then we did a little bit more drill down. We asked students, what platforms did they use to access this information? And the one on the left is a little bit startling, because the most common platform students used to access learning materials was WhatsApp, predominantly a mobile device. And the percentage of use of that didn't change very much at all across the 5 weeks. WhatsApp was consistently being used, and we think the figures didn't change much because it was delivering material in a manner that the students felt comfortable with. Particularly heavy users of WhatsApp were our foundation students. Instagram didn't really get a look in. Blackboard got a great deal of use at the start because it's the learning management system used by our engineering college, and our engineering college has the most students. But that dropped. And that dropped because things started shifting to webinars, and you can include Zoom as well in that, that's on the right-hand side. And that students, and this is a theme we'll come back to later, were increasingly finding the passive consumption of material, even if it was material with an added PowerPoint voiceover or similar, to be unsatisfactory. And what they were asking for and what they engaged with was the use of interactive webinars, which is why on the extreme right of that graph, you saw the use of webinars between the first phase and the first phase more than double, and a similar increase in Zoom. SOUL, well, that's just a learning management system that our medics use. It's based in West Virginia. We have access to that. And clearly they found that a useful resource. You know, this is a lesson for us, isn't it? We design our learning management systems for PCs, but students prefer accessing information via social networks, and particularly mobile social networks. We need to think about that. We need to think about what it means for the design of our content and the way that students interact with it. This is a bit more of a complicated graph. We asked our students what they thought of the quality of the teaching materials. And we've had to do a bit of statistical processing here. So what we did is we took the original answer and subtracted it from the second answer and divided by the original answer to get the change, the delta change, multiplied by 100%. There's some statistical inaccuracies in there because differing proportions of engineering, medicine, and pharmacy students answered the two surveys. So they weren't exactly comparable, but nonetheless, the general results are quite startling. If you look at one, that is the proportion of students who thought our teaching was very poor. Now, at one level, that's good. It dropped by 66%. But in order for that to happen, a significant proportion of our students at the start had deep concerns about the quality of the material. I can tell you what those concerns were. There were concerns as to the quality of the audio and the augmentation. Very often that was caused by the fact that our faculty were materials on their home laptops. And if you know a home laptop, the microphone isn't very good, the camera isn't very good. So we had an extensive loan program of microphones and cameras to our faculty for use, and that helped. And between the two stages, you can see that the proportion of students rating the work as average, good, or very good increased. The very good is such a massive increase because at the start, not many people thought it was very good. But what the takeaway from this graph is that there were clear concerns about the quality of the material, partly to do with the technology, things like microphones, as I said, but partly to do with the unfamiliarity of some of our faculty with creating online material. And that's a point that I'll come back to in subsequent slides. This is a similar graph, again, looking at the change. We asked whether the presentation material they got was clear or not clear. Early on, there were significant numbers of students who found the material unclear. The audio problem, people would record a voiceover over some PowerPoint slides. The quality of the audio wasn't good, it would clip, there'd be gain control issues, and students found that hard to do. A bit of technology helped there. And between phase one, the start, and phase two, the second survey, we did manage to get a grip, partly by technology and partly by improving methodologies through staff sharing experience, to sort out those poor presentations and significantly increase the number of positive presentations. But clearly there were issues at the start, as I said, some with technology and some with methodology. One of the things I said at the beginning was that the bulk of our material in the first phase was taking existing PowerPoints and presentations, adding a voiceover and mailing it out. There was clear and consistent feedback from our students that wasn't satisfactory. And there was clear pressure for us to move from that to interactive sessions using webinars or Zoom or something like that. And that was one of the profound methodological changes that we executed between phase one and phase two, a shift towards interactive webinars. And you can see that in phase one, just under half of our students were getting interactive sessions, but in phase two, 4 out of every 5, the vast majority were getting interactive sessions. And that was a very important learning thing. It may be that graduate students who are usually older and more experienced in higher education can cope with simply having material emailed to them. But at the baccalaureate level, at the bachelor's level, interactivity seems to be at the core of an effective student experience. And similarly, when we provided our students with, our staff with proper microphones, proper cameras, and they had tuition from a buddying system and experts within the college, the proportion of students who thought that understanding increased significantly over the 2-week period is very substantial. So the takeaway from these graphs, and I'm happy to share the more data in more detail if that would be useful to people, is that clearly there were some wobbly issues at the start. There were technology issues we hadn't anticipated. There were methodological issues that frankly we had to play catch up with because we were generating this material, the very next day. The data that we've got here seems to suggest that we have addressed both those issues. Our investment in better technology, the creation within the university of isolated places where people could record their material in a more professional setting, and the switch methodologically from prepackaged material to interactive material has resulted in the students now getting an online education that was fit for purpose. I think they were at the start, but there's a considerably larger safety margin now. And that's something that I think we're proud of. Here's something that we experienced specifically, and since then we've looked in the literature to see whether this is a well-known phenomenon. There seems to be some evidence of it. So as well as the lecturing, students get tasks to complete in the lecture, and they get tasks to complete after the lecture, homework if you like. we had a very significant and sustained pushback from students across medicine, pharmacy and engineering, that they felt we were giving them way too many tasks to do. Now, the interesting thing about that is we were giving them exactly the same number of tasks they would have had if they'd been in a classroom setting. But there is unequivocally difficulties students have completing tasks in the absence of a proper guided tutorial and in the absence of an engaged instructor. Our students had significant concerns with that, to the extent that we reviewed the number of tasks that they were having to do. We reduced them to a core minimum. And as the graph shows, the shift between phase 1 to phase 2 was very much in the positive side of things. But this is a learning thing. You simply can't take the amount of work you give students in a regular classroom situation and expect baccalaureate students, at least, to complete that on their own, in their own time. It wasn't working. And then the overall figures between phase 1 and phase 2, as a result of better technology, as a result of better methodology, as a result of reducing and focusing the number of out of classroom tasks students had to do, we managed to see very significant improvements in our average good and very good scores, and eliminated, but the vast majority of the very poor and the poor scores. So we now, as a result of technology, as a result of methodology, as a result of pruning the tasks to a core minimum, we've got an effective and fit for purpose online learning system. Well, that's the good news. And of course, once you fix one thing, the next thing comes along. We had a great deal of pressure from our students to clarify what sort of assessment we were using. This is a particular problem in subjects like medicine and engineering, where, in all senses of the word, it's a hands-on experience. We clearly couldn't do examinations. We clearly couldn't put medical students in front of patients. And we couldn't bring engineering students into laboratories to do practicals. So we accepted that as a reality and based our subsequent assessments on assignments. Through a great deal of work led by our deans, we got a complete assignment calendar, including what work had to be done, which learning outcomes were being tested, when students had to do them by, and how they should complete them. We got that in detail and passed that on to the students, and certainly they seem a lot happier there. We're using some of the data sets to drill down to specific college level issues. That's something our deans asked. We've got a noticeable number of students who state they do not possess necessary technology. We may well have to move either to mandating possession of laptops for all students. At the moment, we only do it for medicine students, or provide some sort of PC loan system. That needs further verification and resolution. You can fix the technology, you can do the methodology, but clearly students can't do as much assignments online as they can in classroom. And that needs a little bit further investigation. But to summarize, we got a functional 5-site e-learning system up almost overnight. And that's a testament to the good nature, the effort and the competencies of our faculty, our leadership, and our IT department. There are technological challenges we hadn't expected. Some we can do, as I said, by USB delivery. Our servers and our network were running hot at times, and the use of Google Classroom relying on the cloud was a great element there. And that's likely to accelerate our transition to cloud-based learning technologies over the year. The unfamiliarity of students with e-learning has made this very challenging for them, and we need to think about that most seriously. But one thing is, there's two other things I should say. We've created support groups. We certainly had a number of students who were in difficulty, either academically or because of technology, and we've used our student support services and our academic counselling services to work with these students. With the faculty, we had a bunch of faculty who were expert in this and enjoyed it. We had another bunch who were happy to learn, and we had another bunch who were really quite nervous about this. So we created a buddying system where Everyone who was nervous had a buddy who was knowledgeable, and they helped each other. We also made extensive use of online training, including training from our partners in the United States and the United Kingdom, and that's helped. But I think one thing's absolutely clear. We're not going to go back to the same sort of teaching we did before COVID. The intensity, the depth, and the duration of online learning has given myself and my colleagues a clear sense that we need to have a think through root and branch as to how we integrate online learning as an integral part of all our programs, not an optional accessory. Our Deputy Vice-Chancellor is leading a task force to do a lessons learned and future directions there. But we survived, we flourished, and we're determined that the knowledge and skills that we gained through this are going to be used to improve the educational experience of our students once we're all back together in one place. That concludes my presentation, and hope it's been of some interest to you. And Dr. Susanna and I are very happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Prof, for this very live interactive session. It was really interesting. I mean, all the information that you shared. I have actually got a few questions, and actually, I got them interestingly in my WhatsApp instead of in YouTube. So basically, because they are in Arabic. So okay, let me translate this. So the one question was about the internet connectivity survey. So the question was, were the students, relating to their accommodation at Muscat, or they were talking about their hometowns?
This was very much a hometown. All our students had left the hostels, and all our international students, who are about 20% of our students, had certainly gone back to their homes. So this was a domestic measure. We monitored our own network usage quite carefully, and that wasn't the problem.
Great. And the other thing was, I think it is just it's not a question. It's more like a comment, which was interesting that you mentioned about, regardless of technology we use, but students still enforced, or they demanded more like social interaction, and that's why they were more keen to continue their education through technology that we do not use as educational tool. So you mentioned about WhatsApp, and also you mentioned about the importance of students getting live through video with their instructor, and that was really interesting factor. And actually there were two questions, you actually answered them about the future plans of e-learning being something permanent than just an emergency plan. I think you answered that. The last question was that, I think basically now everybody asking this question. So the question is, what national university going to do regarding the assessment? Is there any plan for e-assessment, or or it will be something else?
Yeah, I mean, we've looked at this in some detail. The problem with doing online assessment is that a significant proportion of our students claim they don't have internet access, and an even higher proportion say that internet access is very poor. So I think if we went down an online assessment, that would potentially disadvantage a significant number of our students, and we won't do that. So I think on the basis of that, we will be emailing students assignment. We'll be asking them on their honor to make sure they complete this unassisted. And that's the way we'll go. There's been a lot of discussion to do this. The bulk of the American universities are now moving to a pass-fail system, that they don't feel they can grade things as accurately as they used to. And you either pass or fail, and it makes zero contribution either way to your GPA. There's other approaches, which is if you do better than your old GPA, well done. but if you do worse, we won't hold it against you. There's a range of approaches, and I'm sympathetic to the arguments of both. But I think we have to remember this is an extraordinarily challenging time for our students. None of them signed up to this, okay? And as always with Omani students, they deal with this with grace and charm and enthusiasm, and they're a credit, our students. But it is different, and clearly they're struggling with what they feel is too many assignments, even though last year they'd have had the same number of assignments. So yeah, assessment is an issue. Given the internet data, though, I think we have to be careful about online assignments.
Yeah, and the other question was, which I believe you've answered, but I got it again in my phone, so I'll just ask you this question. So there was a question about what if the situation stays the same, and we also need to have the next semester online. So then what would be the measures? What would be the plan? Because it's gonna, if we say that the next semester is also going to be online, then the time for colleges, universities to provide something permanent is really tricky, because it's really short time.
Yeah, look, it's a real issue in the United States. Colleges such as Brown University and Purdue have said that they're going to start the first semester online, or at least a mixture of online and face-to-face. Now, don't forget, American universities start the middle of August, so it's slightly different. Our current working hypothesis is that we will be back to regular operations with the university staffed from the 1st of September. If that doesn't happen, I think the university sector as a whole needs some guidance from the Ministry of Higher Education as to how we treat students consistently. But my current instructions and my personal wishes will be back to usual on the 1st of September. Let us hope so.
Yeah, we all really hope to things get back soon, inshallah. Thank you for your time. And good luck. We know that it's really challenging, the situation that all higher education institution now facing, and especially with a lot of people believe that with colleges like engineering and medicine is even more challenging. So good luck, and thank you for your time, Prof. Simon, and also Dr. Susama. So and I would end the the webinar, or if so, I'll give you the last word for you guys to
All right. Well, just just to say, we thoroughly enjoyed doing this, and it was really great getting the presentation. I mean, it's been a real roller coaster ride for us making online learning, but we've got in a good place in the end. Credit to you for the Oman Society of Educational Technology, because that's going to become even more important in the next year to every institution in Oman. So we're glad you're fighting for it. We're glad you're showing the way. But this has been an enjoyable experience for myself and Dr. Susama, and I hope it has been for people watching this webinar tonight. So thank you very much, Faisal, for inviting us. We appreciate it greatly.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you then.
Dr. Susama, anything?
Okay. Here we have conveyed everything, I suppose.
So thank you for your time, and hope to invite you in the future webinars as well. Thank you, and take care.
Thank you so much. Have a good day now. Bye-bye.